And who thinks that your Agile transformation is going great? No hands? Okay, that's why I'm here. Creating self-sustaining Agile transformations at Rock is the title, because we have something exciting to share with you. And I would like to give just a little bit more feedback about, so nobody raise their hand about it going well. Can I get a couple people to say some of the anti-patterns, some of the things that are going wrong with your transformation? Any brave souls out there? Yes.
We have due dates that
Due
were
dates?
Yeah,
Okay.
set by executives from the start.
Okay, very good. Fixed scope, fixed schedule. Yes.
Lots of the engagements that I've been involved with have been sabotaged by reorgs happening on a 6 to 8 month cadence.
Okay.
Just long enough to get started in momentum, and then
Wait. Okay, cool. Yep, seen that one. Yep.
Lack of communication in all directions.
Okay, I think that's been named as the #1 problem in organizations in general is communication. Very good. Any others? Carla.
To build on what David said, we've had times where an entire management team is trained and then they all leave.
Oh my God.
Right.
And so the new management comes in without any Agile training, and then we're supposed to, we're hanging out there
Right.
by the skin of our teeth.
It's a tad disruptive, yes. And
I was just going to say, working with partially remote teams and getting the full buy-in.
okay. Well, any others? Yes.
Lack of Agile training for a lot of the key members.
Okay. We're going to definitely hit that. Yes, very good. Yes.
A lack of buy-in sufficient to do substantial reorganization, so that with the work environment, some necessary team resources are not part of teams.
Okay. You need to refactor the way business is done and refactor the organization in general. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
I find on most of the projects that I am working on, people are on 5 different teams and projects, so actually doing daily stand-ups.
Fractionalized.
Yeah, is
people.
less realistic or
Yep. That was one of my first ones. Yes.
I found it's very challenging when the role of the Agile office is taken by enterprise PMO organization. This is where definitely a conflict of interest occurred.
Okay. Very good. One more. I thought I'd struggle to get 2 or 3. Yes. Go ahead.
I haven't told anyone that's what we're doing yet.
What's that?
Haven't told anyone that's what we're doing.
Oh, it's like clandestine Agile transformation? Oh, by the way, we're doing Agile transformation. Okay, cool. All right, very good. All right, well, let's dig in to some of the things that we've talked about here at the beginning. We'll talk about in the Agile mentoring program, which is part of the approach for Agile transformations at Rock. So let's dig in. And I'm the president of MaxAgility. I was previously the director of the Agile transformation for Semantics Norton Business Unit. And I called out Carla because Carla was one of my Scrum Masters there. So just wrapped that up, left them in February, and now doing I call it a restart up, as you'll see, because I had started it up, then went to Semantic, and now I'm back. But the AMP Global Director of the Agile Mentoring Program is AMP. So a little bit about my journey line, and I'll skip a number of years to my first Agile role. So that was at Washington Role in Orlando, and I was, they called it a backlog manager. Has anybody heard of that in the Agile world? So it turns out it's a product owner. Right, it's funny, right? So I did that for about 3 months, and I thought, I don't know exactly what this is, because we were talking about Agile training, and we didn't really have that. In fact, they told me to essentially Google some things and start doing the training myself, so that was fun. And so I did that for about 3 months, and I thought, I like this enough that I want to get certified in this. And so, rat-a-tat-tat, I got a CSM and a CSPO, and I thought, I am Agile enough. I can be now an Agile coach after 3 months. Who thinks this is a good idea? 3 months. 3 months of PO-ish kind of role, 2 certifications, and then they hired me to be an Agile coach. So that was really rough. I don't recommend that. Don't do that. Don't try this at home, as I say on TV. Because what happened is, and I'll scoot up to at the top there, my first client was Prudential Retirement. And they wanted me to do a 5-day team kickoff. And if you're familiar with the CSM and CSPO, CSM is 2 days of content. CSPO is about 60%, 70% the same. I don't have enough content to last 5 days, so that's fun. So I was up till 3 a.m., 4 a.m. the night before each night saying, what should I say on this slide? Just piecing together the 5 days. So again, don't do that. So that was my rough entry into being an Agile coach. Anyway, so fast forward, what brought me from, I was in Ohio in 2014. I lived in Ohio, but I was a road warrior, and I was traveling Monday through Friday away from my family. And I was in Chicago at one of the other logos that you saw there was Discover. So January 2014, the weatherman came on and he said, welcome to the coldest place on the planet, including the South Pole. And I said, I'm doing it wrong, right? I'm away from my family. It's not like I'm in a great, warm, nice place. And then a guy with the last name of Sutherland, which was not Jeff, by the way, but another guy that had the last name of Sutherland called me up, so it was kind of a weird situation. And he said, yeah, I'm part of the leadership team for an Agile transformation at Cisco. We are going to do the largest implementation of Scrum on the planet. I was like, I gotta have that on my resume. I'm going to do that. So it's 28,000 developers, 2,800 Scrum teams, and yeah, in the Silicon Valley where they're going to do Agile right. Right?
Well, at least it's warmer.
Yeah, it is warmer. I love the weather. So I came here for, they said, it's 3 years. I said, so I'm going to relocate my family. And I have 7 children, and I'm not Catholic, Mormon, or crazy, by the way.
He is crazy.
So I said, I'm going to be relocating my family across the United States. Are you sure this is a solid gig? And they said, oh yes, 3 years, 3 years solid. It's like, okay, cool. So I get here, and about 6 months into it, they said, not so solid after all. And someone said, yeah, if anybody tells you that in Silicon Valley something lasts more than 6 months, then they're lying to you. So I found that out too late. But fast forward a little bit, after the 6 months, a couple months later, I got a gig here in the city. And I live down in Santa Clara. Anybody done that commute before? That's not a good commute. So one night it was 2 hours back, and I said, okay, so this was valuable because I learned not to have a job in the city. After getting into that 1 month contract, then I got an offer to co-lead, essentially, the transformation for Semantic. And that's where, about a year into it, that Carl and I met. But anyway, so that is Cisco through Norton. And that takes us into why have an Agile mentoring program. So a lot of the anti-patterns that we were talking about is related to just this. And so you're going to see some similar kind of things here. So leading causes of failed Agile projects. Number one, company philosophy or culture at odds with core Agile values. Anybody relate to that? Yeah, right? So the 4 values, like people and interactions over processes and tools. Yeah. It's just not the way that I've typically experienced it. It's absolutely at odds. The Agile mentoring program, so it's you'll see that it's a scaled version of mentoring. And mentoring, and related to that, the last one I'd like to point out is concerns about a loss of management control. So when you have dramatic change, leaders in particular, who are the ones that are signing the check and making the decisions, when they feel like they're losing their way, and they hear about things that in Agile you don't need to have managers anymore, that's not conducive to the Agile transformation formula. So we set up, again, scaled mentoring, but there's tracks that you'll see, and leadership is one of those tracks. So we provide a safe space for the leaders to talk about the things that are really concerning them. And not just the leaders, but product owners, scrum masters, anybody that's involved in that Agile transformation. So there's lots of statistics that say that the odds are stacked against us, right, in terms of an Agile transformation going well. If you take out Agile out of the equation, change is hard just in general. And one of the sources that we use is a guy named Dr. John Cotter, and he's into change management. And he's done exhaustive studies about change initiatives in general, and 70% of change initiatives in general fail. When you put Agile on top of it, how do we get anything? That's why nobody raised their hands, right? At the beginning when I said, is anybody seeing an Agile transformation that's going well? Nobody raises their hand because it doesn't feel like we're making any progress. So not that I feel like we've found this silver bullet, but we have found something that people are pretty excited about and that is meeting some degree of success. So let's dig into that further. So this is, anybody familiar with Shuhari, by the way? Shuhari, so it's a maturity model for teams. I liken this similar to an Agile transformation overall. So in the beginning, we had, we usually bring in what I wrote on a LinkedIn article about this, we bring in the swarm of Agile coaches, right? The contract coaches, they come in like a swarm, which is what we did at Semantic. We had 10 contract coaches, 5 in the States and 5 in India, and I was the only full-time employee. So that's what happens at the beginning, and the focus is on just doing Agile. So it's the mechanics, usually like a 2-day team kickoff is what we did there. And moving on though, when you go from doing Agile to being Agile, right, so this is a continuum, when you start to really focus on changing the mindset, that's where the Agile mentoring program comes in. So that's the entry point that I want to emphasize. And then Scott, did I see Scott come in? Scott, he'll be here in a little bit if he's not here yet. Going from here to here, starting to change the mindset is what gets us more from in the whole organization, from a shoe state into a ha state. Going from ha to re, though, really takes a lot of deep transformative work. And some of you, if you don't mind, raise your hand if you've been in Scott's class. It's deep stuff, right? So that's where you go to figure out what are some of the things that are really deep in people that needs to be changed in order for us to really excel. Going from the form, storm, norm to ultimately performing, you got to get through some of that deep stuff. So that's what we do at this juncture. So it's a continuum and it's always a journey. And with that said, has anybody been in an organization where they said the Agile transformation is finished or it's done, or in my case it was actually stated it's good enough? And so the next slide up here is mission accomplished. We're good enough, right? All the teams have been trained, so there's nothing else to do, right? Wrong. There's so much more to do. So if you ever hear someone say mission accomplished in the Agile transformation, there's something, that's what we call a bad smell. So moving on, so we talked about the vision of the Agile mentoring program. So this is fashioned after the Agile manifesto, and so some of it's going to look real familiar. We are uncovering better ways of, but then we change to producing valuable working Agile transformations. Keyword working, just like in Agile manifesto, we want working software, we want working Agile transformations. Back to the Agile manifesto's wording, by doing it and helping others do it. So again, we don't claim to have it perfected, but we're doing it, we're learning some things, and we're very excited to share some of these things with you. And then into the specifics of the AMP vision, again, through the Agile mentoring program, a self-organizing cell division framework. And so what we mean by cell division framework, we got a little animation here to show that. So in the beginning, it was me. I was in the middle there, and Carlo was in cohort number 1. We've now had 10 cohorts. The next cohort is launching this Saturday, so that'll be the 11th one. So we've done this 10 times now, and it's gone down. So it's that spreading kind of effect. The deepest that we've gone is 4 levels now. So it started with me. There was a guy that was leading what we call cohort 5. Cohort, I use that word to indicate that it's something challenging that people go through together. So his name's Mike. Mike led cohort number 5. He has 7 people in his cohort, and my target is about 7 plus or minus 2, strangely. So he led cohort number 5. He has 7 people in that cohort, and 3 of the 7 went on to lead another cohort, including a cohort that was all managers. So this was originally targeted at Scrum Masters, product owners, some Agile managers here and there, but it was a cohort of just leaders, and it was really exciting and a bittersweet thing, I have to admit, because I was telling the story to my friend Javier here earlier. I'm a parent in a big way, 7 kids, right? There's a moment when your kid gets to a point where you have that realization, that revelation that they don't need you anymore. And so that was my intent, was, as you recall, the name of the presentation is creating self-sustaining Agile transformations, right? So when it got down beyond Mike, I noticed that the people there really didn't call on me or ask me questions. I was like, "But that's my baby, right? I want to help you. I care about this. I love that," and they didn't call me. So that was the bittersweet thing. But the goal, the objective was accomplished, for it to be an Agile transformation that worked, and that worked without me. So it was really, really cool, weird moment, but great moment. Anyway, so moving on. So cell division's working. We've done this. We've got a number of people that have led additional cohorts, ranging from we've got 5 time zones in play now. Guy down in Texas, that's the cohort number 5 guy. 3 people on the East Coast, guy that helped, along with Carla, to originally architect the scaled version of the mentoring program, and then there's a gentleman over in India. So we're always looking for other people that want to join the list there. That's the cell division that's worked so far today. And now let's dig into some of the fun parts of what's going. If you will stand, if you are a workshop facilitator, so these are some of the people that have been through the program or are supporters of the Agile Mentoring Program. And we're going to have exercises, simulations, actually about 3 of them. And you have markers and flip charts, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you so much. And we'll get started into that in a few minutes. So here's how the program works, digging into that a little bit further. So the AMP track listings, and there's 6 of them, and I'll just really detail a couple of them. So at the top is the Agile Team Facilitators, and this is targeted at traditionally Scrum Masters. It can be leaders, as I was talking about as well, Kanban Masters, Agile Coaches. It's very much that audience, but it's a foundational course, and I've actually just recently rebranded it. And I now call it Agile Change Agents, because that's what we're doing, is we're training up people to change the culture, to change the organization. So with that said, there's some additional tracks there for product owners, team members themselves, a leadership track, and then I'll skip this one and talk about if you don't have Agile engineering. So does anybody know, raise your hand if you know, what was more popular? Scrum's the most popular framework now, but what was the I think that you're not fair. Who knows what was the previous most popular Agile framework? Yes? It was XP. And so Scrum now has become so popular, but by design it has no engineering practices. And so we have half of the Agile equation, literally, right? So we have a track that will be focused on that. Was that what you want to say, Dan? Okay, cool. All right. Keep going. All right, so the Agile Change Agent course structure, there's 13 weeks of this, and we'll talk about why it's 13 weeks. There's a reason for that. The weekly agenda is, there's talking points, chapter review, there's a couple of chapters. We have 3 different books, as you'll see, which is a change. Cohort 11 is now, it's got 3 books, it used to be just 1. But exercises, Lean Coffee, we'll go through a Lean Coffee simulation here if you haven't done that, by the way. So raise your hand if you've done a Lean Coffee before. Okay, so good. Most people haven't. Excellent. So we'll spend some good time there. And then, so importantly, who's gone to like a 2-day, 5-day, or some really long class course, and they're just lecture, and then you leave and you're like, I just spent all that time, was that valuable? I think you call it ROTI, actually, return on time invested, right? So if you don't take something away and say, I'm going to do something with that thing, then it's not time well used. So at the end of each session, we end with next steps so that you have something that you're actually going to take and create what I call a personal improvement backlog. So everything's a backlog ultimately, right? So that goes onto your personal improvement backlog. All right, so I mentioned that there's 3 books. So first up is Accelerate, and at the end, I don't know where, oh, Keith's got them. So Keith is, raise your hand, Keith. So Keith is the guardian of the door prizes, and he's going to hand out 4 things. One that is a free ebook. We're giving away 2 hours of free consultation plus this ebook. And Dan Pink's Drive book, and Lisa Atkins' Coaching Agile Teams book. By the way, I'd like to do just a quick survey on this. Who's read Coaching Agile Teams, Lisa's book? It's a good number of you. Okay, about a third. How about Dan Pink's Drive? Okay, less. Who's seen Dan Pink's YouTube on autonomy, mastering purpose? Probably almost everybody, right? And Accelerate, which is, Cotter's written a lot on change management, including My Iceberg is Melting. So any Cotter books at all, just raise your hand. Curious about that. Cool, great, thank you. All right, so those are the 3 books that are involved, and the way this works is we pair you with one of our mentors. So I talked about this generational thing. So it started with me, went to cohort, the first cohort, Carla was in that, and we just did cohort number 10, and Carla led cohort number 10. And so I make sure that a person's gone through the course before, or I rigorously interview them to make them one of your mentors. So we pair you with one of the mentors that way, and I talked about the rigorous screening process, which is me. But I'm hoping to expand that to a wider audience. So all of the cohorts, there's been a little tweaks here and there. Some of the cohorts have been as short as 60 minutes per week. Most are 90 minutes, which was a retrospective item. People said we definitely need more time, so we expanded from 60 minutes to 90 minutes. And one of them was 2 hours. They just can't get enough, so they ramped it up to 2 hours. But they all have been meeting weekly. And that's in the office. That was my original intent. So me as an Agile coach and all my wisdom, I was like, so this should be co-located, right? And then that guy that I told you about that ultimately went 4 generations down, he said, well, you know, the strangest thing happened. A coach in our India office saw the LinkedIn article that you had, and he said, this Agile mentoring program looks like a great thing. He's with Semantic's Enterprise Business Unit. And he said, can we do that too? I said, well, absolutely, of course. We're all part of the same company. And he said, but there's just one problem. None of my Scrum Masters are together. Every one of them are in a different location. So I was like, anybody been like that? Well, so I still have command and control on me. I'm like, I kind of bristled. But I said, well, the Agile thing is to run an experiment. So we ran it, and it was phenomenal. In fact, cohort 11 that I mentioned starting this Saturday is all remote. So it went from, it's definitely, obviously, logically going to be co-located to all remote now. So those are the 2 modes that we've gone through. I'll skip over the housekeeping, but to quickly reference it, we have team working agreements that everybody gets on board with. And then there's responsibilities of each of the mentees. And the one I'd like to emphasize, as Carla will remember, this person said, and she was a new Scrum Master. So she was like me 7 years ago. She was in a role, just new, got a CSM, knew the world, right? And she was telling me that me as a coach with my years of coaching, I was wrong on pretty much everything I said. And I reminded her, so this is what we call the Agile mentoring program. So if you want to be mentored, then you should listen. Otherwise, you don't have to be in the program. We got lots of people lined up. But so the top one there, and skipping down here, we talk about certification here. And so remember, I was talking about we're looking for other people to be AMP instructors. To be an AMP instructor, it's pretty rigorous to make sure that you are, again, qualified. There's, unlike some other certifications in the industry, which are take a quick and easy test and you're certified, this is much more rigorous. So you have to attend 80% of the 13 weeks. So that means you missed 2. You have to average 80% on the quizzes, so one week you can get a 90, next week a 70, 80% average, and get 80% on a final exam, which is pretty tough. If anybody wants to say, okay, people that have been through it, they're like, yeah. And then secondly, so there's a subjective qualitative part of this as well. And so as an example, since I was there at Semantic with Carla, I would sit in on her ceremonies. And so I made sure that she passed the observation of all of her ceremonies. If somebody has a gap there, then I'll coach them on that until they get to the point where either they get tired or we eventually pass them. Last but not least is, what's anybody know the number 1 fear of people in the world?
Public speaking.
Public speaking. So to get up in front of just like 7 people, some people are like, no, I can't do that. So it's not for everybody, but those are the 5 requirements to be an AMP instructor. So in summary, and we're leading up into the simulations, so what this course is all about is teaching you how to teach others and how to mentor others. And if you like that kind of stuff, this is absolutely what you want to do. I love this. This is, I light up. And Carla, and anybody that's been in any of the cohorts, I live this, I breathe this. I'm so excited for this Saturday, I can hardly wait. But anyway, so that's the quick summary. All right, so has anybody heard of Sharon Bowman's 6 Trumps or teaching from the back of the room? Yeah, of course this guy has, and people that have been through this presentation now. So quickly, the point is we're trying to teach and mentor people. So there's tricks to the trade. And I'm going to show you 2 sets of these. So the first set is what we call the 6 Trumps. Think Agile Manifesto, not so much Trump, but pause.
Having a problem.
Images trumps words. So is anybody death by PowerPoint, right? So 200 slides, I think, is my max. When I went to the Cisco transformation, it was actually 200 slides with no exercises. And I said, do you mind if I change that up? And they're like, okay. So you want to not have a lot of words on a slide. You want to, in fact, some of the best presentations I've seen have 3 words, 5 words, because the person, it just becomes a trigger for the speaker to be able to speak to it, right? So images over words. Talking trumps listening. So for you've been listening to me for about 20 minutes now. And so we're going to switch so that you're going to be talking about this in another simulation that we're about to talk about. So each one of these things by themselves help you to remember. So the more of them that you can do concurrently, the better. And you'll see that we do that in our simulations. So movement trumps sitting. So isn't this a strange one? So just from getting up out of your chair to standing helps you to remember things better. It's funny, but true. Next one, writing trumps reading. So when you write something, this is a fun one if you're taking any courses in particular. If you're typing notes, not so good. If you're writing notes, very good. It really actually helps you to remember. So when our table leaders are taking you through the simulations, they're going to say, okay, so your turn to write, right? So that pulls that one in. Shorter trumps longer. The next, I intended for this to be the one, but we are going to be in the next, I promise, the next version of this presentation will go no more than, there's a magic number. Anybody guess? How long should you go without having some kind of break, some kind of change? Anybody know? Take a guess.
15, 20 minutes.
20 is too long, 15 is too long. 10 minutes. Don't go over 10 minutes. Yeah. So shorter trumps longer. And the last one, and the reason that a lot of people say, what is this presentation tool that you're using? This is called Prezi, Prezi.com. If you haven't used it, it's great. Great stuff. And just by having a different way of presenting the information, pulls in the different over same. So that's an example of that. So keep it exciting. All right, so the next thing is what we call the learning pyramid. And we're going to go into the exercise. So are you ready to stand up? So the learning pyramid, at the top is lecture. So that's pretty much what I've been doing. So in the worst case of this, example of this again, is if you go for 2 days and it's just lecture, 48 hours, these aren't exact numbers, but you'd be able to recall about 5% of what you learned if you were just being lectured. So that's the baseline. If you go into reading, so now you'll start to see how the Agile mentoring program is structured. When you have chapters to read, you automatically go to a doubling of your learning capability. So there's reading and AMP. Audio visuals, we have different videos that you can see and that sort of thing. So just, again, whenever you're creating training materials, you want to keep this whole pyramid in mind. A demo, so there's a Scrum ceremony called Sprint Review, and demo is a part of that, and fascinatingly, that takes you to 6x better than the baseline. So all of those are, the blue are the passive teaching methods, and now we're going to cross over into the active space where you're actually participating. So the lean coffee, if you haven't done it before, what you're going to see is it's a group discussion. So it starts to border on that one at the beginning of the presentation. I said, so who's done this? So you're starting to hear from each other, right? So that resonating and seeing that we have some affinity in what we're doing here. So that group discussion takes you to now 50%, 10x. Practice by doing. So remember, in the course structure, we have next steps. So that now, when you actually go back and do on-the-job training and try out what you did, you're at 75%. And then last but not least, teaching others. So when you lead your next cohort, you're at 90%. Is that making sense? Okay, cool. All right, so if you want to see more information, a lot of people are curious about that, Google the Peak Performance Center and you'll see more details. But with that said, we're moving into the actual simulation and exercises.